Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Heather Frierson, and I'm your host of the Business Spotlight podcast. And today I have Nick Jarvis, co-founder of Pinnacle Logistics. And he's going to be talking today with us all about his journey to entrepreneurship, the challenges and best practices, and really to share a sneak peek of what it's like to own and operate a business. So if this is your first time to the show, be sure to like and subscribe so you get a notification every time a new show drops, just like this one. Well, Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's nice to meet you, Heather.
Well, if you could, it's nice to meet you too, by the way. We've chatted a little bit before we got started, and I'm interested, just like I know all of our other listeners are, just a little bit about your background and what led you to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so my parents were entrepreneurs growing up. So I don't remember my parents ever having a 9 to 5. So that was kind of in my blood from the start.
Mhm.
But I've gone back and forth on that, but pretty early on, like right out of high school or right out of college, actually during college, I started a business. So I started a dirt bike shop back in the day.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And so that was my first journey into entrepreneurship. And then I switched to a 9 to 5 for in logistics. So that was my first foray into logistics out of college. And then now I've come full circle back to entrepreneurship, but in logistics. So.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about Pinnacle Logistics. What is it?
Yeah, so we're a freight brokerage. So we basically help shippers move goods from point A to point B. So there's a few different modes of transportation for that, but basically we move goods from point A to point B. That's the gist of it. And that could
And
be
how did,
domestically within the US, or we also do containers internationally as well.
oh, wow. How did you get into this business?
That was my first job out of college. So I worked at a company called Global Trans right here in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And I was running that dirt bike shop at the time, but wasn't really making a whole lot of money. So it was just enough to stay afloat. And then my best friend started working at Global Trans, and he was like, "Man, you got to come check this out. It's like the best job ever. You just negotiate with truck drivers all day." And I was like, "All right, well, I'll give it a go." So I interviewed and ended up working there for a couple of years, and then started on my journey from there. So.
What interested you about negotiating with truck drivers? What was so fun about that?
That's a good point. A lot of people wouldn't think that's fun. I think it was because, especially back in college, I mean, I think similar to a lot of people, I had a lot of points of view, and I think in college it was actually fun to argue with people. And so, I mean, I would stay up late in dorm rooms arguing with my roommates or hallmates about anything and everything. I mean, it could be from world hunger to politics. I mean, it didn't matter. We would just sit up and argue about our opinions on everything. And so I think, nowadays, I don't know if it would really appeal to me for the same reasons. I love what I do, but back then it was because negotiating and difficult conversations were something that I enjoyed and I did all the time.
Okay, well, so you talked about being a co-founder. So your friend got you into this business, sort of, with in college, and you kept going. How did Pinnacle come about?
Yeah, so after working at Global Trans, I ended up working for another company called Volition Logistics, and I absolutely loved it there. I worked there for 5 or 6 years, and I ran their truckload division, and I loved it. I couldn't have asked for anything more. The owners were amazing. I had a lot of autonomy. I got to hire and fire as needed. And I just really loved what I did, and I got to build a team there. And then about 5 or 6 years into that journey there, Global Trans purchased Volition Logistics. And so,
Full circle
yeah, it's kind
moment.
of a full circle, yeah, for sure. So when that happened, we just didn't have any interest in going back to work for Global Trans, and so that's when a few of us left and started our own logistics company. So.
That's a huge leap to say, I'm working for this huge company don't want to do it anymore. Let's just start our own and dive in. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, I think it was not as big of a leap as it was for me. I think when I started that dirt bike shop back in the day, that was actually
Mm-hmm.
a bigger leap because I had never done it before. And so when we started Pinnacle, logistics is a pretty ubiquitous industry. There's a lot of common threads throughout logistics that all companies face. And so we kind of already had a handle on. So I was the truckload carrier sales manager. I ran the truckload office. So that's tracking, negotiating, booking trucks, all of that stuff. And then I actually got involved a lot on the customer side, even though that wasn't
Mm-hmm.
technically my role. So over those 5 or 6 years, I had seen a lot of that. And then one of my co-founders was also one of the main sales reps. So we had, the sales side of
Contacts.
it, and he had spent his years perfecting his craft of salesmanship. And
Mm-hmm.
then on my side, we had the booking trucks and negotiating the truck driver's side and hiring and managing a team and building an office. And then we also saw that company go from, like, when I joined, it was probably 8 million a year in revenue. And then when I left, it was like 80 million a year in revenue.
Oh,
So
wow.
we watched it go from 8 to 80. And that was a huge help seeing, okay,
Mm.
this is what it looks like when you go from super small startup to successful company that has an exit. What does that look like and how do you do it? Right. And so
Mm.
now obviously we do things a lot different than Volition Logistics. Tons of things have changed, but the general structure of, like, this is what a logistics company looks like when it grows that much, I think that
Mm-hmm.
was really helpful.
Yeah. So you go from college dirt bikes to companies owning your own. Now you're having to lead a team and you're growing. How do you train and develop maybe new team members when they're coming on if this is something new for them?
Yeah, so that's something that we're actually in the middle of overhauling right now. So
Mm.
the good timing on that. But right now we do what a lot of the logistics industry does, which is we rely heavily on prior experience and shadowing current employees. And
Mm.
it is, I will admit, it is not the best process in the world because I think it can be done a lot more efficiently. The challenge, especially with a startup, now we're finally reaching the phase a few years in where we have a stable enough book of business that we can start to really document and get things down in a set order.
Mhm.
And then we can have a set process for onboarding. And so we just started this initiative a few weeks ago, where we're redefining our entire training program and getting it all documented, and then having a set course that people go through when they onboard. So.
Have you seen by implementing new processes and, like you said, overhauling, have you seen a difference in how the team works together or maybe the alignment of everything?
So in our last phase of training and onboarding, I think we saw a huge difference, which was we went from written SOPs to video SOPs. And so we just do a lot of micro videos on different tasks
Yeah.
of how to do it. And so we use Loom. It's a common tool. Probably
Mm.
a lot of people are
Love
familiar with Loom.
Loom. Yes.
Love Loom. And I love their new feature that turns a video into an SOP. I don't know if you've seen that. It's pretty cool.
No.
And so yeah, so it uses AI in a plugin where you record a whole video of you doing something, and then you just click create SOP, and it creates a whole SOP on it. It's actually, and I know a lot of times AI things are garbage, and it is like, oh, what's the point if it's not going to do it right? This one is like, it's so spot on. It's, you just make a few quick edits, and then you've got yourself an
Mhm.
SOP. It's been pretty awesome.
Wow. I bet you a lot of people are listening to this are like, thanks for sharing that little nugget. That's really
It
good.
was a lifesaver for me. So like, we never had the time to create SOPs, and I think a lot of startup founders will relate to that everything's changing so fast, and you just don't
Mhm.
have time to sit down and write out some formally
Yeah.
documented process. You're just doing what you're doing, and then you train the next person to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so that has been super helpful because then you can just record what you're doing on your screen, and then have an SOP of it created from that. So
That's wild.
yeah,
I know. I think, like you said, you said something to the fact, like, maybe not trusting. You didn't say that word, but AI. You said something about AI,
yeah,
and it can be so beneficial for things like that. It's just so good, and I'm sure, with your industry, which you're helping, like you said, transfer and help trucks from point A to point B. Time is of the essence.
yeah.
So anything that can help that, I'm sure is beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and so many things are real time reactive in our
Hmm.
industry that when people are reacting to things all day, it's really hard to set aside and say, okay, no matter what happens for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to sit down and write this SOP, right? That's just, it doesn't happen super often. And we
Hmm.
make jokes about it. We now have a loom room where people go into the loom room and make looms and SOPs. But before we had a loom room, it was very difficult to break away and just say, hey guys, I know my desk is right here, but don't walk up to me for the next 30 minutes.
Hmm. I like the loom room. It's like a podcast room. You have to have your own loom
Yeah.
room. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been in business so far? And how did you start? You talked about, you had your co-founder, you had different contacts or different skill sets. How long from initiation to now did it take to really get things going?
Yeah. So we've been in business for a little under 3 years. And
Mm-hmm.
then as far as getting things going, we had a lot of connections in the industry going into it. So that was helpful, but it was really more about, I think it really helped a lot that we had three of us starting. And
Mm.
that's part of the reason in the 5 or 6 years I was at Volition, I had never decided to go out on my own, is because doing it by yourself is a huge risk. And I think doing it with two other co founders really helped reduce some of
Mm-hmm.
that risk because I don't, I would say I don't excel in the skill of sales. And
Mm-hmm.
my other two co founders, very much so excel in the skill of sales, and that is their wheelhouse. So I run the operations and they run the sales. And I think that's where a lot of founders have risk is in
Mm-hmm.
the skill set they lack. And so for me,
Mm.
I was able to band-aid that skill set of not having the skill of sales. And I think that helped reduce the risk a lot and then also decrease the time frame to launch.
Mm-hmm. That's so important that you recognized what your skill set was and what you needed to complement. I think that so often is overlooked and maybe why things slip through the crack in many businesses.
Yeah, I would agree. I think most businesses usually start from a strong skill set of sales. Like the founder, it's
Mm.
founder-led sales, founder-led marketing. They take all the sales calls because the business wouldn't grow if they weren't good at sales, right? But then they
Mm-hmm.
have to figure out the operations and how to run it effectively. And you're doing that with employees but that's one thing that I love about our business is that it's operationally and sales founder-led. So that's
Mm.
been something
That's
that
really
has
good.
helped a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of business owners about their vision and their why. When you step back and you look at Pinnacle Logistics, and yes, you like debating or, pulling things together, what would you say is your big arching why of why you do this?
Yeah, I would say it's just about pride in what you're putting out there.
Mm.
But that comes through in a few different areas, right? So number one thing is creating a great place for people to work. And
Mm.
I'm super passionate about treating my employees well and creating good opportunities, not just any opportunity, but really high quality job opportunities for people.
Mm.
And but then also like putting out a really amazing product for people. Now, granted, I don't have a why of like wanting to save the earth or feed starving children in Africa. It's not that because what we're doing is not sexy. We're moving goods from point A to point B, right?
Mhm.
Sure,
Sure.
sometimes we might be moving something really important, but
Exactly.
our number one sector is furniture. So it's usually not life-saving critical stuff. It is it's more about creating a product that people get more than what they expected. Right. And
Mm,
I think that's actually something I'm experiencing right now on the home front is we've been hiring a lot of contractors to do work on our house lately. And
mm,
so often throughout society, you get less than what you pay for and you get
mm,
less than what you expect. And I just want people to experience getting way more than what they expect for a change.
mm. I want people to get way more than they expect. That's something we should all strive for, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a lot harder to deliver on than to say, it's really easy to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. And like you said, you are transporting maybe not life-saving products, but you are changing people's lives by their, waiting on the product, and you're giving job opportunities. You never know what's in those trucks. And so, what do you see for the future of Pinnacle Logistics?
So for us, we're actually in the middle of a refocusing right now. So what we've noticed is that when you don't have one person spearheading a certain mode of transportation, it
Mm,
doesn't grow as quickly as we'd like, right? So what we've decided to do is we're going to have the founders are focusing on one mode of transportation, which is LTL or less than truckload. Most of the viewers probably don't know what that is. It's
yeah.
basically moving anywhere from 1 to 6 pallets of goods. It's just small shipments of a pallet here and a pallet there, versus a lot of what we do is full truckload.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's for our US domestic division. And then we also have a Mexico division that does Mexico to US and US to Mexico truckloads, as well as to Canada. And then we also have an international division that does containers from overseas, imported to the US. And so our plan right now is to have the leaders of those divisions really take on those divisions as more like a founder role where they're leading the marketing
Mm,
and sales charges, and we're giving them all the tools necessary in order to do it and all the backing and financial resources that they need,
mm-hmm.
but really putting them in a position where they can lead the revenue for those divisions and all the divisions can grow. So that's kind of the plan.
Yeah, it sounds like you're not just thinking of long term for the company, but even long term for you as a founder. Maybe not wearing all the hats, but really being focused on specific areas. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been probably the biggest adjustment over the last 3 years is at which stages do I remove myself from
Mm.
a process, and then how do I replace that exact same outcome or result, but with employees that can help build that same outcome.
So is that something you're figuring out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last 12 months have been a big shift in that
Mm,
area. I'm not really involved in the day-to-day anymore. Yeah, I'm here for advice and I'm here to structure the product and make sure the
sure.
product is the best it can be, make sure our teams are structured in a way that makes sense and creates amazing results. But as far as individual things on a day-to-day basis, I'm not very involved.
How does that make you feel when you think of a company you started just 3 years ago and you've already gotten to a place where you don't have to be in the day to day? What effect does that have on you?
It's awesome. It's that piece of it is awesome. I think we've still got a lot of growing left to do. So I'm not quite celebrating just yet, but I think it's been really helpful because I can look at the big picture and work on the big moves that are going to take us forward and not
Mhm.
whether a driver arrived on time or not. And so
Mm,
that's been really helpful. And I think so at Volition Logistics, one of my co-founders, well, both co-founders worked with me there, but one of my co-founders, Tyler, he was my right-hand man, day-to-day manager, right beside me, doing the day-to-day with me.
mhm.
And we always joked like we could never take a day off together, ever. Like that
Mm,
was cardinal rule number one. Either Tyler was in the office or I was in the office, period. In I think in 5 years together, there may have been like a half of one day where we were
mm.
both out at the same time. And we're best friends. So
Yeah,
that's,
that's hard.
yeah. So, but, and our wives are friends. And so we've never
Mm,
really been able to take a trip together. And just recently in the last, I don't know, I'd say the last 3 to 6 months, has been where like we could totally take a trip together and it would not be a big deal. So that's been, and it's a huge testament to our team. I think we have a
Yeah.
few key people in place, and a lot of our team have been with us for a long time. And so now it's finally getting to that stage where we can really focus on the things that are going to drive the business forward and have a little flexibility. So.
That's amazing. I mean, it takes some people 10 plus years to get to that point. And for you to be able to say, me and my co-founder, who's really my best friend, that you can take family vacations, that must be really, even though if you're not where you exactly want to be, like you said, yet, it's you're on the road. You're getting there. And so must be a great relief.
Yeah, we're definitely getting there. I'm not dissatisfied by any means, but
Yes.
I think there's always reminders along the way of
Mhm.
entrepreneurship is a tough journey, and you better
Mhm.
be ready for it because it's gonna kick you in the ass at some point.
Yes. I think
Sorry, I
a
don't know
lot
if
of
I can curse on
no, that's
here.
totally fine. I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So, when you think of that, where do you see yourself as a owner in the next 3 to 5 years?
Um, I imagine myself in the same role as I am now, maybe slightly more removed from the day to day, but
Mhm.
probably doing the same things I'm doing now. I think I'm pretty young. I'm 33, so I'm not in a hurry to get out of the game.
Mhm.
But possibly working on bigger picture things like mergers and acquisitions type stuff.
Mhm.
But and partnerships, things like that.
Mhm.
But in general, I think the only thing left for me to get out of the day to day on is sales. So right now we're founder led sales for the most part. And
Mhm.
once once we can remove ourselves from that, that's when I think it opens up bigger opportunities for M&A and partnerships and things like that that could take us to the
Yeah.
next level. So
What would that mean for you and your family if you were able to get an acquisition like that?
um I don't know. I don't know if it would really change a whole lot, to be honest.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm I'm not really big on like acquiring material things. I mean, yes, sure, I have a nice house. I enjoy nice things, but like I still drive a 2011 Nissan Rogue.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I'm not hurting to get anything nice
Mhm.
and shiny. But I think probably the biggest thing would be that because I'm always going to work, even if I exited for a
Mhm.
good amount in the next 5 years. I would still be working doing something. Now, granted, I don't even know that I would want to exit because I love my business.
Mhm.
So we've talked about that on whether or not we would even want to do that. I really enjoy our business and I love our people and I love our customers and I don't see any reason to quote exit. Um, but I think the biggest thing would just be getting flexibility um, around spending time with my family. So right now, I think it's pretty good considering I'm an entrepreneur. I've definitely had times in my life where I didn't have this type of flexibility.
Mhm.
So it's already pretty good, but I think it could get a lot better. And I think that would be right in time for as my kids are really hitting their stride. So I have
Mhm.
a 5 year old, almost 6, and then a 3 year
Oh.
old. And
Oh,
so
you got a house full already.
yeah, yeah. So they're gonna be, let's say 5 years from now, they'd be 10 or 11 and 8 years old.
Yeah,
So that'd be a really key time to have a lot of flexibility and free time and
for
be able to
sure.
spend that time with them. So,
Yeah, I love that so much because what I found in doing these interviews with amazing owners like yourself is that you're really not working just to work. One, you love what you do, but there's also the idea of family and what not only are you giving job opportunities, but you're creating something for your kids as well, whether that's time or resources or flexibility. And that's kind of what I heard from you just now.
yeah, absolutely. I think whether my kids decide to be entrepreneurs or not, I want to teach them how to create a lot of value for the world around them and
Hmm.
not only value, but kindness and caring and all the other things
Hmm.
that go into being a great human being, but just teaching them how to be of value to the world.
Yeah. On your business journey, what has been maybe the biggest lesson you've learned that you want to, give back to others as far as a business leadership?
Oh man, the biggest one. There's like 1,000, but I'd say, I don't know. I think I'd have to say that it comes from the core of entrepreneurship and who it's right for and who it's not. And I think when I started my first business, the dirt bike shop, and just in general, when I was younger, before this entrepreneurial journey, I would have recommended entrepreneurship to just about everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have said, start a business. That's how you get out of the rat race. And I think that's in general still true, except man, I see a lot more exceptions to that now. Like I think had Volition Logistics not been acquired, I would have happily stayed there the rest of my career and would have had tons of flexibility and built up a good career and plenty of income, and not had to take on the risk of entrepreneurship, right? And I think one thing that it's taught me over the last 3 years is like we had a lot of benefits coming into this, right? We had a lot of relationships. We knew people. We had mastered the craft that we were about to embark on. Never mind, not mastered, but we had already spent years developing the craft that we were about to embark on. And there were still tons of moments in the past 3 years that just kicked us in the teeth. And if you're not ready for that, don't start. Like, if you are ready for that, if you hear that and you're like, yeah, I'm ready, no problem. Okay, cool, then go for it.
Yeah.
But if you're not ready to get kicked in the teeth, don't even start because there's no point, right? Because at some point, you can have all the advantages stacked in your favor. You will still get kicked in the teeth at some point.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready, it's going to be tough.
That's so good and so true. What kind, when you think of your team and the growing team that you have, how would you describe your leadership?
I would say I'm fairly laissez-faire, but I have high expectations. So, and I think I could do a better job of making those expectations clear. But I think that people that work with me understand that I expect a really high level of quality and a high level of output. But at the same time, I don't micromanage the day to day.
Yeah. You want to be able to trust your team.
Yeah, if you can't trust your team, then there's not really any point, right? Because if you're looking at every decision they make and looking at everything they put out, then you might as well just be doing it yourself. Yeah.
Before we get to the rapid fire questions, what do you want people to know about Pinnacle Logistics that we haven't covered?
I would say from a customer's perspective, I think we're all about solving problems that other logistics companies don't want to solve because it's too hard, right? And so we actually seek out freight that is not desirable to other companies. So whether it's big and bulky, oddly shaped packages, multi-stop routes with 20 plus stops on a truck, just stuff that sounds like a nightmare to other logistics companies, that's where we thrive. And that same message is to employees too, right? So on our job postings, we literally put looking for someone who likes puzzles and like looking for someone who likes a challenge, because if you don't like a challenge, you're not going to fit in here, because we don't just look for the easy stuff, right? So I guess for both customers and potential employees, we're looking for a challenge.
What's an example of a freight that might not be desired? Can you share one with us?
Yeah, for sure. So our biggest sector is furniture and mattresses. And furniture and mattresses are notoriously big and bulky and annoying and heavy. And oftentimes with furniture, the driver actually has to bring the furniture to the back of the truck, and then they take it off from there. And that's not normal. So most drivers just drive from point A to point B. They never have to get out of their truck. The receiving warehouse takes it out and you're done. And furniture is the opposite of that. It's get to the receiver, get out of your truck, get in the trailer, pull these giant packages to the back of the truck, and then they take them off. And you have to make sure they're taking off the right number of packages. It's a pain in the butt.
It's a lot.
But that's why we like it, because other people don't like it. And that creates a competitive moat where we can really help those shippers in an area where they're being underserved currently, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the key is like, if you're just moving a truckload from point A to point B, from Dallas to Chicago, I mean, literally thousands of brokers can do that. They don't need another broker like me to do that.
Well, I would say as a customer, thank you for moving that furniture. As someone who just moved, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of other people do
Are
too. So
are you in Austin?
I am. Yeah.
One of our biggest customers is Bob Mills.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. The furniture store, right?
Yeah, yeah. They
Bob
have
Mills,
one in
yes.
Waco and one in Temple and Lubbock, Odessa, a couple others. Yeah.
I've never been there, but I know what you're talking about. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to go check it out now, right after this show. I'm gonna just take off and go to the store.
Nice.
All right, let's get to some fun rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, what do you think is the key to success for you?
For me, being willing to do what other people are not willing to do and sticking
Mm.
with it for long periods of time.
Being willing to do what others are not willing to do and sticking to it.
Yes.
I like that. I'm gonna write that down. It's so good. All right, what's your one piece of advice that you would give to others?
And I think it would have to be, I mean, it's kind of a repeat of the last question, but it's just
Yeah.
sticking with something for as long as humanly possible. Like if you feel like there's a chance you're on the right track, just keep doing it. But the problem is sometimes that means for years with no
Mm.
reward. And unfortunately, for anybody familiar with Alex Hormozy, I think he nails it when he talks about the longer you're willing to go without a reward, the more successful you're going to be.
Mm. That can be hard sometimes, right?
Super hard, especially
Hmm.
in entrepreneurship. That's probably the number one reason to fail businesses, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. All right, book or podcast? What are you listening to right now or reading?
Oh, podcasts for sure. Not a big reader. The problem with reading is I fall asleep 3 seconds in, so that doesn't work.
That's okay.
Also, with my book on my chest, it doesn't really do me any good. But no, from a podcast perspective, it's all business stuff right now. I'm a
Hmm.
huge fan of Alex Hormozy,
Hmm.
and Layla Hormozy, his wife,
Hmm.
is an
Hmm.
absolute beast when it comes to operations. And then from a marketing perspective, Ravi Abuvala, he runs a company called Scaling with Systems. So those are my favorites right now.
What is the last one so people can write it down?
Yeah, it's Ravi Abuvala, so it's Ravi, or you could just search Scaling with Systems, that too. Oh, Dan
Scaling with
Martell is a
systems.
great one too.
You listen to a lot. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I got 30 minutes to and from work every day, so that's an hour every single day that I got to fill up. So,
All right, here's a fun one. If you had a little bit of magic dust and you had one area to sprinkle on, what would it be?
in the business,
Yeah, in your business.
okay. Customer acquisition for sure. I think that's the hardest part of every business, and that would be amazing to have some magic fairy dust for.
Yes. Customer acquisition. Share a little bit more about that real quick.
Yeah, I think the nice thing that we had coming into this business is that we had grown and operated an operations team before, right? But on the sales side, we had only grown and operated a single book of business. We hadn't grown and operated marketing and sales and how to actually build the machine. And so we actually recently hired Scaling with Systems, that company that I was talking about.
Oh,
Yeah, we recently hired them to overhaul our marketing and build it out from start to finish. So I'm really excited to get that going. It just started a few weeks ago.
Congratulations. I love that.
Thank
I'm gonna
you.
have to get that book now for sure, or listen to that podcast for sure now. That's a
Yeah.
good one. All right. Well, before we get to the last question of the day, share with everybody how they could follow you or hire you, all the things.
Yeah, really right now it's going to be on LinkedIn. So either myself, Nick Jarvis, or Pinnacle Logistics. That would be the company page. There's another Pinnacle Logistics that's based in Dallas, Texas. Ours, the one with the little gold mountain logo behind me.
Like it right behind you. Yep.
Yeah.
Looks good. Okay. Final question of the day. What is most inspiring you today?
I think something that's really inspiring me in the world today is just access to information, things like this,
Mm,
right? The fact that you're doing this and then how many people get to watch that and learn from it, right? I just
hmm.
posted a video on LinkedIn the other day that it had like 11 hours of watch time. It was like my first video, so it's nothing, but I was just excited about it because it was like a little
Yeah.
2 minute video and how many people got to have access to that information,
Hmm.
right? And I think that's really exciting that we're growing up in an age where freedom of information has never been more accessible. And I
Mm.
think that's a huge help to anybody looking to create something for themselves.
I love that freedom of information. That's so true. Sometimes we can overload ourselves, right, by Googling everything. But the fact
Yeah,
that we can learn so much more than anyone could even 20 years ago is insane.
100%. You could learn more on a topic in 5 minutes than somebody could have
Hmm.
20 years ago by reading about
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I love it. I love that you're a learner. That's most entrepreneurs are, but I love that you're a learner. It's so cool. Well, this was a great conversation. I know our viewers and listeners loved it. I really appreciate it. So I just want to encourage everyone that is watching to save this show because Nick really did have some great nuggets of wisdom, especially that loom room. That's going to stick with me for some reason. I love it, but so much. So I really appreciate it. So don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss a show like this when a new one drops. And Nick, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It was nice being on here.
You're welcome. Wish you all the luck and can't wait to hear more.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Until next time, we'll see you. Bye bye.
Thank you. See ya.